I'm ready when you are. I've been rolling for 2 minutes.
My name is Jazz. I'm gonna be so transparent. I cringe at introductions. So I learned something about me. I hate titles or hanging to titles, because I feel like that's not who you are. Right now, I've founded a business, but before I was a professional, and I'm still a professional, So recently I sat with that and I'm like, I'm just a beautiful soul. That's who I am. That's what I'm about. No matter where I am in life, I'm always meeting other amazing souls, below the surface kind of soul people who can tell me their stories and open up. So yeah, I hate introductions. That's just I don't care about what you're currently doing. I care about who you are. So that's how I like to introduce myself. It's just Jazz, and from there, you'll get to know me.
I mean, that's perfect. I mean, yeah, so, we go through these conversations. You and I have done it in person, we've done it over the phone, and, it is always hard to recreate, but I think, the biggest question is, and the hardest question is, what do you want people to know, I guess? What do you want people to understand about you as, a core person, your core?
I think I would say I'm constantly evolving. My heart is just open and burst open. And I do everything from my core, my center, if it's an event, if it's business, if you're sitting with me, it's out of love. No matter what it is, it's out of love. So I have a tattoo on my side. It says faith, hope, love. I'm a very faith-based individual, but it wasn't until a lot of the hardest moments in life I realized whatever your faith is, it's just you believing in something. And then when I dug deeper with that, it's you believing in yourself. So when you have to think about whatever mountains you have to move, if that's mentally or physically, moving against a mountain, there's a belief within you. And then there's that hope within you. And then the last one being love. And love being my favorite thing to just share with the world. Because I think so many people are gentle, loving beings, but it's hard for them to share that. And I think even myself, I'm just always trying to be gentle and loving and share that. And this smiley person who's you're always weirdly smiling. So.
No, and I agree. I feel like being with you and talking to you and kind of even the tone of your voice, it's so gentle and it's so warming. And I feel, do you feel that's hard to kind of share, especially when you're trying to run a business and when you're trying to?
I used to be very rah, and it's the calming the beast. I think we all have it, but I've learned to life struggles, just heartache, pain, whatever has taught me to sit with it. And I sit more with stillness. I sit more with my thoughts, that when things happen, I've learned to not be so reactive. One thing I tell people, you never in life said, thank God I overreacted, ever. And so now when I encounter so many people that I realize we're transactional as beings. So even us sitting here, my tone, my everything can shift your energy. So if I can do that, and I have the power to do that with myself, then that's how I try to go into the world with people. I'm I can bring you down to my level in the sense of having you feel calmness, having you feel a sense of joy or peace or whatever that whenever there's a storm, whenever there's chaos, like you remember, like Jazz is always calm. But I'm secretly in situations that it's like chaos, and I'm like, I love being the person who's like, I handled that well. I gave myself grace. I thought before I reacted. But I have an amazing support system of people who are just like wise and just like sit with it. If I talk to my dad, like you can see him thinking before he gives you a response. And then when you're out in every day, you see people just instantly reacting and they're like, I want to be, you're just like being mean just because that's the first barrier of yourself that you want to give versus being like, this is a human being. How about I look at them as such? So, yeah. And then I start whispering.
Vulnerabilities and fears that you want to like share with people so that they don't feel as alone, because I feel like that is part of your like mission, to create a space for people to feel safe.
I recently shared with someone like this entire process, creating a business, is so scary. It's such a blank canvas, and you don't fathom that in life. You think you start on this journey and there's a path before you, but it's not. Like your path is completely unpaved. Even if there's similarities between you, what you do, and the next person, it's such a blank canvas. And that scares me. I didn't realize like what I was stepping into. And sometimes I scare me with like, I want to be a Lululemon ambassador. I didn't fathom what that really meant. And I also couldn't fathom like, I got to do what I love, and it translated and it became. Like sometimes we think we have to step outside of ourselves, and then the lessons that you keep learning is go to your center, go to your core, keep aligned, stay within love, and it'll pour out. And I've fallen out of love with things, and sometimes people don't realize like you're gonna fall out of love with the things that you genuinely love. Running, I love running. I've ran for 10 plus years. I used to be considered morbidly obese, and that's what made me start running. And that was just a space of when I was scared, or when I did feel vulnerable, or like when I felt like people would judge.
Let's back up a little bit. So were you considered morbidly obese for most of your life?
No, it was just like throughout college.
Okay.
So I went to the doctor. I had been around people that it was just a really unhealthy environment, and through my eating habits, like that's where I picked it up. And I went for my checkup. I was in college, and she sat with me and she said, we're gonna put you on some depression medication. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And she was like, well, I just want you to know. And my doctor said, well, and she wasn't kind when she said this. Like, you're sitting with a college kid who's just now meeting themselves. And she's like, well, you're morbidly obese. And it was like obese, cool, but morbidly, I was like, how can I be morbidly? Like, I'm used to my family, all of us, we look like this. And I just knew within me, like I was like, I don't want to take any medication. I don't think I have a problem. But I didn't realize I was dealing with depression in a way that was like physically showing. So yeah, when I began a shift, running was the activity that I was like, I can't really go to the gym, because when I'm in the gym, I'm thinking about everybody else looking at me even when I'm trying. But when I would go outside and just run, the cars were passing so fast, or the people passed so fast, that like my mind was like, they can't think about me that long. Like they passed me and it's gone. And so I started where I was. I was like, if I can run a mile or if I can walk a mile, it's that movement. And I kept doing it. And like, if you really saw me from like, when I first started, would walk everywhere. I lived in Chicago, walked everywhere. After work, I would set an appointment with myself, like I was like, I have a meeting with me. And I would just sometimes walk, I would sometimes run, I would sometimes work out. And the huge shift that happened was after my brother passed. I was like, he said something to me before he had passed. He said, Jazz, you don't really want the shit that you say you want. Because if you did, you'd see it. You you just want to look cute at it. And I was like, no, I don't. And after his passing, like, I've accomplished some of my greatest things. I ran a marathon. I've ran several half marathons. I've started a business. So yeah, and running was the one thing that there was a freedom to me in it, and still is. When I'm out there, that space has no negativity because it's blank. It's bliss. So running is where, like, any events, I create them there. Any partnerships, I create it there. Any thoughts, and I'm just like step after step, like tread after tread, like, what about this? What about that, Jazz? What about this? And sometimes I have music on, sometimes I don't. It's my favorite thing. Yeah.
That's okay to say.
Yeah.
Let's go into it then.
The story.
Let's go into it. Yeah. You mentioned your brother.
So I've kind of told it, but I haven't. So
Wait, so you haven't told this yet? Like, truly? Like, people do, how many
not a lot of people know.
Not a lot of people know. So people know Honeydew, but they don't know what.
They don't know, like, the motivation. And I say motivation because I've sat with this for a really long time, and my brother, Daniel Kirk, is a motivation for me. But the one thing I had to think about was, like, that's his story. And I haven't necessarily shared it because it does tie to me, right? But it's a space of grief and pain, and I always want to share with people the hope on the other side of that, the progression, the movement. Like, whatever grief we have, whatever pain we have, you can always move forward. Don't stay in it. And I don't always share it with people. Like, his life saved my life. So when I created Honeydew, it was my ode a little bit to him, but a lot of it to me. And so my brother, I get a call from my mom. It was a Sunday, July 17th. It's like 9-something. I honestly do remember the time. It's so weird. I get a call, my mom screaming, and she says, your brother's trying to kill himself. I hang up the phone with my mom. I call my brother, he doesn't answer. I call his girlfriend, she doesn't answer. I call an Uber. I lived 3 minutes from my brother. Like, you don't get a call like that and you don't not show up. So I knew, put some action, but I couldn't fathom what was really happening. And so I call my brother again, no answer. I leave a voicemail. I say, hey, if you don't call me back 2 minutes, I'm calling the police. I'm on my way, but I'm calling the police. And now we have to deal with, like, the police are gonna come to your house and deal with this, and you're gonna be in trouble. As my Uber was arriving, his girlfriend calls me screaming, and she's just like, he did it, he did it, he did it.
Were you the first call?
So my dad was on the phone with him, my mom was on the phone. They were on the phone with him. So I was the first call of the person who's gonna arrive there. And I'm still in shock. And I'm always gonna be a calm person. And I'm like registering, like, wow, like, my brother just killed himself. The Uber comes, I get in it, and this driver, I get in the front seat, and I look at this man, and I say, hey, my brother just shot himself, so I need you to, like, not stop at any stoplights. And he's like, the face you get of someone like, how do you say that so calm? But I did. So he drives. We hit the corner where my brother's building is, and we're turning, and all you see is like ambulance and fire trucks and everything. And before, we're like a building away from his building, and I get out the car and I just start sprinting because I'm like, oh wow, I just got the call, but like it's getting realer. Like I'm running into the fire. I get to the elevator, the police are going up first, and I'm just still like trying to be calm to get past everything. So I get to his floor, I'm walking past police officers, I'm almost at the door. I'm like, oh, okay, you can handle this. And they stop me and they're like, you can't go in there. And I'm like, no, don't worry about it. Like, that's my brother, so I'm just going to check on him. He called me, it's all good. And they're like, no, ma'am, like you really can't go in there. And so it's like hitting me that it's serious, but it's still like, so 99% of me knows my brother's dead, but 1% of me has hope that I'm like planning, like if he shot himself in the head, it's fine. We can prepare for this, whatever, hospital, whatever is happening. 1% of me is like, this is okay. And 99% of me is like, this is not okay. And I'm sitting, if that's kind of why I have faith, hope, love, because 1% of hope, that's all you need. And I'm sitting there, haven't cried yet. I'm just like, be calm, be calm, be calm. And the police officers are starting to come out, and I'm like, hey, you know, what's going on? And this lady and this man walk out, and I look at the man and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And the lady police officer looks like, no, we're not going to tell her. And the guy looks and says, no, that's his sister. And I'm like, is he okay? And she says, no. And 1% of me was like, no what, ma'am? And that's what I said. I'm like, no what? Like, just tell me, like, explain what no is. No, he's still alive, but he's very, very injured. And she says, no, ma'am, I'm sorry, he's gone. And when 1% met 99% and made 100% gone, it was like, yes, I cried, but like, I just said, like my entire body was like, he's okay now. Like if he, and so my brother took a rifle to his head and blew his head off. And I said to myself in that moment, if that was his decision, I'm gonna have peace with that, because I know him well enough that he's like, it's like, you know, your guardian angels are people you know, and that's what I had. Like, it was like I was born again in that moment, because I'm like, you have no more time to pretend to live. You have no more time to pretend to do the things you want to do or impact the people. Like, his life was just like air into my lungs. That was like, Jazz, use this. Make sure you understand what, like, you can, people can say, like, heal yourself. Like, that's it. If with Honeydew, my only goal is, it's me. I am Honeydew. You're strong, gifted, and talented. I am strong, gifted, and talented. So the only wish I have for people is to work on yourself, for yourself. And that's the impact that you make, and that's the amplification of everything. And so his life, his story, that night, when I got home, I realized my brother was supposed to be at work that night. The first person I had to tell, so I had to call his job, and I had to tell the person who was like supposed to be off. I was like, hey, Danny's not coming in today. And he's like, oh no, is he okay? Like, I hope he's okay. And I said, he is. Like, nothing in me could tell this man at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, I didn't want to put that pain on somebody, because I was like, this person's alone somewhere in the night I don't want their thoughts to go crazy. So I said, hey, can you just have your boss call me in the morning? It's super important. Like, please, the moment she gets in, tell her to call me. And his boss was the first person, like, outside of my family I had to tell. And I had just, like, woken up, did my cry. I told myself I would go to work because I'm that person who was like, I need to work through this and have a distraction. And she calls me. She's on the phone. And she's like, hey, such and such told me you're Danny's sister and you're calling. Is everything okay with Danny? And I was like, hey, I just need you to, like, I'm going to tell you something, but don't react. And she's like, okay. And I said, hey, and this was the first person I had to, like, pull this out of me. And I said, last night Daniel committed suicide. And you hear the phone drop and her scream. And I was like, crap. I was like, oh, I just told her don't react. And she definitely, like, I didn't expect that. So I was like, okay. And I had to, like, there's so many people I had to tell. So for an entire year, I had to tell people, after person after person after person after person, Daniel killed himself. He committed suicide. I also had to, like, heal on my own. So every day, hundreds of times a day, I had to say this. And I would, like, at night just cry and bawl and just cry and bawl. But I made sure I was good. And people would be like, Jazz, you have a level of peace. But I was like, I knew him, and I do have peace. But it also was super weird that I was like, nobody knows he saved my life. Because we all have anxiety, we all have depression, but now I have this person who shows me when I don't work on myself and when I don't, like, really heal, or if I don't do X, Y, and Z, there's an end result. And it's your option, but I'm gonna work on myself. And I'm gonna see what that looks like. And I'm gonna have the hard tears, and I'm gonna have the hard conversations. Like, when you have to address suicide to people, you also have to address their ideology behind what they think suicide is. You have to break down what your community thinks that is. You have to break down just what each person had or feels with that. So there was so much I felt with it. There were so many stories, like, so that experience, that's why I tell people, it motivates me, he inspires me, he is an encourager, but that is his story. And that's probably why I haven't told it a lot, because it's painful, and I also have to think about my family. I have to think about my dad who's on the phone with him. I have to think about my mom, like, and I also, there's so many moving parts.
How many years ago?
This will make 6 years.
6 years.
So after his passing is when I started, like that, like I said, I was just like, you have no more time. If you want to do something, you do it. I went skydiving on his 1 year anniversary because I was like, oh man, like, you're gonna do a fear activity every year. So I love to, now I'm a person who's like, meet yourself at your fear. If you say, I'm scared to do that, that's probably where you need to, like, channel in. And on his anniversary, I jumped out of a freaking plane. And when everybody was like, isn't it scary? I was like, it's bliss. Like, free falling is bliss. And when you feel that in life, you can land and apply that bliss. And so, yeah, that story isn't what, it lives in my heart, and it's why I have, when I do things, I do it from a space of love and caring, because the world can taint and just have whatever negativity, but it's like, when you come from a space of, like, I love you, I don't have to love you with conditions. I love you as a human being, and you deserve to hear that. You deserve to know you're valued and you're enough, because the world doesn't tell you that enough, and they think, like, you hear it. No, there's never enough to tell someone. Like, when I hug people, I'm like, I'm giving the tightest hugs. I don't know when the next time I'm gonna see you. But I want you to, like, if you can hug me and feel like, oh man, it feels like Jazz is breathing life in you. That's what I want. Oh gosh.
I know you're gonna.
That story is a lot for me.
I know. Well, I mean, I think that's natural.
Yeah.
It's like a natural